Thank you for participating in the 10th Annual BlackStar Film Festival. We would like to thank our funders and individual donors, as well as our network of producing and community partners. The runtime for this panel, Composers Roundtable, is 60 minutes, including audience Q&A. So please leave your questions in the comments and we'll do our best to engage with them. Please follow us on all social media platforms at BlackStarFest and use the hashtags BSFF21 and BlackStar10. Don't forget to fill out our audience evaluation and vote for your favorite films. We hope you have a wonderful time during the 2021 BlackStar Film Festival.
All right, welcome to the 10th Annual BlackStar Film Festival. I'm Kira, and I'm so excited to be experiencing this virtual edition of the festival alongside all of you. It's my pleasure to start off by introducing the moderator of this panel, DJ Lil Dave Adams, and then I'll introduce our guests as well. So to start off, DJ Lil Dave is a Philadelphia-based producer, composer, radio host, and member of the DJ crew Ill Vibe Collective, who has made a name for himself by exposing people to soulful music in all its forms. He produces and hosts Excellent Reception, a music-focused podcast that has been broadcasting for over 2 decades on radio station WKDU 91.7 FM. And then next up we have Amanda Jones. Amanda is an Emmy-nominated composer who is rapidly becoming a standout voice amongst the new generation of television and film composers. Jones's original music can be heard on the documentary series Home, Good Trouble, Cherish the Day, 20s, A Black Lady Sketch Show, and many more. In addition to her television credits, Jones's work on short and feature films include the upcoming HBO Max documentary feature, Dreamland, The Rise and Fall of Black Wall Street, and Sujata Day's upcoming feature film, Definition Please, starring LeVar Burton. And then next up, we have Jlin. And Jlin is the recording alias of Jerry Lynn Patton, an electronic music producer from Gary, Indiana. Initially associated with Chicago's footwork scene, her music evolved far beyond that style, exploring unheard rhythms and placing her in a category of her own. Her first full-length album, Dark Energy, released in 2015 with Planet Mu, was the immediate critical success. The Dark Lotus EP and sophomore album, Black Origami, from 2017, also received numerous awards and honors. And next up we have Sultana Isham. And Sultana is a composer, violinist, writer, and ethnomusicologist based in New Orleans, Louisiana. Sultana's film composer credits range from avant-garde, horror, fantasy, and archival. Sultana was a researcher and composer for the documentary All Skinfolk Ain't Kinfolk, which screened at BlackStar's and documentary series The Neutral Ground on PBS. Her scholarship is featured in eFlux Journal and investigates the gendered racialization of sound as biology. She is also the co-founder of Alphabet Sound Observatory, an audio engineering library for Black and Indigenous women and gender-variant artists of color. And last but not least, we have Tamar-Kali, and Brooklyn-born and bred artist Tamar-Kali is a second-generation musician with roots in the coastal sea islands of South Carolina. As a composer, Tamar-Kali has defined boundaries to craft her own unique alternative sound. Her score for Dee Reese's Oscar-nominated Mudbound garnered her the World Soundtrack Academy's 2018 Discovery of the Year Award, and has been classified by IndieWire as one of the 25 best film scores of the 21st century. Tamar-Kali recently credits include Dee Reese's The Last Thing He Wanted, Katie Green's The Assistant, and Josephine Decker's Shirley, and the documentary John Lewis, Good Trouble. And with that being said, I'll pass it on to Dave.
All right, I just got to say I'm very humbled to be here with this amazing group of composers. I wanted to start by just, if everybody could give me a little background about how you got into composing. We'll start with Sultana.
Okay, so hi everyone, thank you for having me. So I am a classically trained violinist. I've been playing violin my whole life. And I started off as a performance major. I mean, that's what I did in college. And I kind of just, film scoring kind of fell into my lap, honestly, probably about 4 years ago. And ever since then, it's just been more and more. And I did a fellowship with the Sundance Composers Lab last year. And I'm also in an interdisciplinary program there right now. So yeah, that's how it started, probably like 4 years ago, doing short film, a horror film, and then progressed into more documentaries.
Jlin, could you tell us a little bit
I
about your background? Yeah.
sure. So I started really just creating and back in 2000 and it's late 2007, early 2008. Um, I started off making um, footwork tracks like the fast version, and then in 2010 it had just started to evolve into something else. And I made a track called Erotic Heat, and that's where it started. Like my sound, when I first discovered my signature sound, and then it just escalated into um, starting to work with Paris Fashion Week for Rick Owens, and it was at 2013. Um, and I had the track he used, Erotic Heat, which was on the compilation for my record label that I'm on now, Platinum Mood Records. And that's really just kind of like where I started. And then it just, you know, like fast forward, that turned into 2 albums, um, a soundtrack for Wayne McGregor's autobiography, for his dance piece. Just a lot. Yeah. It was just a lot, honestly. Yeah. So yeah, like yeah, I don't want to get all long winded. So no, it's just a lot. Yeah.
All right. Amanda, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I've always been passionate about music and started playing piano when I was really young, maybe like 3, and then clarinet maybe around 8, just kind of like when people join band. And then 15, started playing guitar. That's kind of like my primary instrument. And studied classical guitar in college, studied music composition, graduated, and then just moved to LA. And at the time, my primary focus was more like touring and performing with my band. And then, so that was like 2010 to 2014. And it was kind of like just this fun, colorful indie rock and roll band. And 2014, I was like, kind of grinding my gears in LA and wanted to incorporate something else into my musical practice. So I feel like the nature of being in that city kind of just fall into film scoring, and everyone's creating something, or you'll, invariably like bump into someone that's like a director or producer that needs music for something. So just started doing that, tons of short films. Decided to immerse myself in it fully, and just started doing internships with Hans Zimmer and Henry Jackman. And then I was hired at John Powell's studio and was kind of like an on-call music production assistant for him for a couple of years. And then randomly got the opportunity to work at a studio, kind of like an AR capacity at Lionsgate in their television music department. And I did that from like 2016 to 2018, all the while still working on like short films and like touring with my band and just doing all this musical stuff. Just wasn't sleeping for my like formative years when I first got to LA. And then in 2018, I had the opportunity to do my first feature film, which actually premiered at BlackStar, called One Angry Black Man. And then from then on, I just took the leap. I was like, I'm just going to do this composing thing full time. And so while I was working at Lionsgate, I met Lena Wayath, and at the time she was developing 20s for BET. And so I just kept in touch with her after I'd quit my job from that studio. And then ultimately, a couple months later, like 6 months later, I was able to work on the pilot. And then the pilot wasn't picked up immediately. And then I met Dime Davis, who was working on the Black Lady sketch show. So I did like a full series of that for HBO. And then 20s was picked up. And then I did a full series of 20s. And then it was kind of very fluid from there. I started something for Apple TV, worked on Home. And then I worked with Ava on Cherish the Day. And also a pilot called Naomi. And then it's just been really fluid from there, doing a lot of different things, ads. I did an ad for like McDonald's to like Nike, and it's just been like a blessing and an incredible, life so far. I can't believe that I'm like a full-time composer, and I'm super grateful. And it's been awesome. Yeah.
And Tamar, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am essentially self-trained. I'm a second generation musician. My dad was a bass player. I was trained as a choral classical singer as a young girl in Catholic school. And so that was my most consistent formal experience with music. But outside of that, having my dad, my family, we had a club down south. I would sit in with bands. So music was definitely a part of my home life and the general expression outside the initial formal training as a choral classical singer. I decided not to go to music school because, based on my experiences in a parochial religious institution, I wasn't so keen on just how things were going in terms of representing what I was experiencing. So I decided that I would be an education major, and I ended up just dropping out of college and doing music full time because it was never, I guess, honest for me to say that I wasn't going to do music. It's what my soul knows to do. So, performing and recording artist, started in the punk rock hardcore scene here in New York. And then through that, um, I was approached by a producer for Dee Reese's first film, Pariah. They wanted to use some of my songs for the diegetic music in the film. There was no score in that film, so there was a soundtrack connected to it. The cinematographer she was working with, Bradford Young, he had worked with a colleague of mine on a feature after this documentary called Afropunk that my friend James Spooner did about Black kids in the punk rock and hardcore scene. So he introduced her to my music, and that's how I got that connection. And we developed a friendship, and over time, she became more familiar with the breadth of expression from my experimental chamber ensemble to like the 5-piece straight ahead rock stuff that she'd used in the film. And she decided that she wanted to work with me in this new capacity. And because I was so very much aligned with her artistry and her integrity, how authentic she shows up. I was like, hey, I mean, I compose. I haven't composed for film, but artist to artist collaborating together is something I'm definitely interested in. And so, in that way, like Sultana, kind of fell into my lap. And from there, I've, you know, been creating this body of work in film as I continue to perform and record and do commissions. So, it's a blessing, as Amanda said, just to be able to be expressed fully as a musician and a composer.
I kind of see this theme of this composing kind of being a thing that kind of fell into your lap. Do you feel like it's a natural progression of the music you were making before? And do you feel like you're able to like put yourself into this music, like put elements of your earlier work into the current work? That makes sense. Whoever wants to answer first.
Sure, yeah, I'll guess answer.
Well,
I
Okay.
yeah, I definitely, feel like there's like earlier versions of some of my like band work. I feel like just as a musician, you're kind of always working on something, whether it's like an idea. And I feel like every time I would create an album, I was always kind of working towards this sort of sonic idea. And I'm finding that I'm doing the same thing in my film scoring work. And I'm really grateful to have been able to like, collaborate with a lot of people who are open to me experimenting and kind of continuing to like find the sound that I want to create like on their project. And so I don't know. I definitely feel like I was like destined to become a composer. Like when I was a kid, I would just hum film scores, and like I would recognize a film without even seeing it from just like the soundtrack, like just like down the hallway. I'd be like, oh, it's like the first three notes of the film, or and I didn't realize film scoring was like a viable career option until much, much later. But when I kind of think about everything and how I've always felt about film music and what it kind of means to me, it makes sense for me to be where I am now. It's an interesting kind of just like journey that's led me here, and it feels definitely destined in a lot of ways.
it's interesting because I find it puzzles me a lot of times for people who have a performing background. It's like, So I definitely evolved from a singer-songwriter into a composer, but I was a composer before I was a film score composer. All the songs that I was performing, whether it be with my band or with my chamber ensemble, were songs that I composed. I think that the transition isn't as difficult for some because there's already a through line. And it's funny because I see how oftentimes people they 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 don't necessarily connect the two as if they're mutually exclusive, so that technically if you're a composer you're just composing works for other people, but that's not the case for those of us who perform the works that we've been composing through the years. And in terms of how my experience as an independent artist, singer songwriter, comes into when I'm working collaborating with a director on a film, what I like to say, and I know for me this is true, and it's part of the reason why I didn't major in art in school. I need to have, I'm glad that I have this lane where it's about me. I get on a stage, it's my namesake, it's my work. I'm expressing the rawest um, and my experience. But then when I'm collaborating with someone, I get to actually take a break from wearing all the hats of being an independent artist, having this be my vision, having it be my voice. And I get to just play one role in a collaboration. And that's a great rest from the work. And in return, when I come back to my solo work, I'm developing, my muscles are stronger because in order to be a film composer, I had to really expand my knowledge just technically in terms of like working in a digital audio workstation and, figuring out the language of cues and mock-ups and things of that nature, where I was very much in the practice work previously. So I feel like it gets me stronger and I can bring this more critical, objective eye and approach to my personal work. So I feel like the two feed each other.
Yeah, for
Sultana,
me, it's
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm saying just whoever
I'm
wants
sorry.
to answer.
I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a delay on my end at
No
least.
problem.
But for me, similar to what Tamar was saying, there is a channel that connects both being a performer and a composer. It's definitely related. I think for me, the only thing that was different was my goals had transformed, my goals had changed. I grew up in a very strict, rigorous training, and I was preparing myself since I was a child to be a concert violinist, to be playing in like orchestras and all this music by dead white guys. So I didn't want to, it's interesting because now that I'm really thinking about it, I kind of felt um, when I was doing my solo work before I started to do film scoring, it was out of survival, honestly, because a lot of the road work for a classically trained musician is very, like people don't really make it until they're in their 40s or even older. Like at this point in my life, I should still be in school. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And I was experimenting with other genres and very experimental things with myself, but then also working with my chamber ensemble as well. And we did a lot of work with resurrecting Creole folk tunes and the works of Black composers. So I think through that practice, I wanted to do something that was bigger than me rather than just me constantly performing all the time. And so with film scoring, I felt like I could be a vessel to someone's vision, someone's idea, a story, and to remove myself from, the goals that I had before of me wanting to be centered in my relationship with sound. Because with film scoring, it's not really about me. It's about the film, it's about the vision, it's about the project. And I like that. And I feel like the transition from a composer or performer to composer is like writing music, honestly. There are some unexpected turns that happens. There are um, joys that you can find. There are new discoveries to be had, and you kind of just have to go trust the process. And so for me, it was very much so just a constant journey of trusting the process. Even now, still, I'm constantly relearning to trust the process.
Jlin?
That's definitely me every day. Every time I sit and share the word, trust the process. Um, I never know what's gonna come out, and actually, that's my favorite part. I don't know. I have no blueprint. I don't want a blueprint. I don't want. I'm not classically trained, but I can hear, and that's good enough for me for what I do and for what my journey is. And I really there's such beauty of not knowing, but still being able to create and not being dictated to, um, in the sense that, definitely have done commissions, of course, and they have a theme, it's a concept, and I can definitely, work within, the concept. But one thing I've been graced, every time I've been approached, it's always been the thing of, the person is saying it's like, I need your sound, just here's the concept. And then they've just let me ride and go. That's the way it was when I work. I'm not saying that every project will be that way, but the truth is, I don't know if I can honestly say that I don't even know if I could really work any other way. And to some people, it might sound like, well, then you don't plan to go far. And it's like, no, that's not necessarily the case. I feel that when a person has the signature of a thing and whatever it is that they do, that's your thing. And nobody can rob you of that. So your job is to elevate where you are. And that is a relearning of trust in the process, like you said, every day, every day. And some days it's a fight, some days it's great, some days is rarely for me is it seamless. Because I love percussion. So the way my brain breaks percussion down, sometimes it can be overwhelming where I'm like, I gotta walk out of this room because it's too much. It's too much right now. I can't do it. I'm not there. No. And, I have to save me. And I love what I do. As far as the performance part, I love to compose more than I love to perform, I must say. Writing is my first love. But I'm definitely not, um, I feel like my journey is what it is, and then I'm just, I'm supposed to, just roll and complete that, and I don't have an expectation of the only thing I expect from myself is to always do my best and always do it in the sense of me being authentically me, and that's just the best I can do. That's where I'm at, just right now. And I just I feel sometimes I think as just as human beings, is that alone being in musically, um a lot of times the answer is right in front of us, and the moment we stop thinking about it, it's like, oh, it was sitting there the whole time, hiding in plain sight. So especially that's when trust in the process comes in. For sure. Yeah.
I gotta say, like a few years back, I started looking into film scoring as like an avenue that I could go down, and I started looking for black and brown um, composers, and I didn't see a whole lot. But as I started to dig deeper, there started to be more and more to come out over the past few years. What do you think the holdup is with more young black and brown people getting into film scoring?
I think for
I don't think,
Oh, sorry.
I don't think, well,
Or you can go,
I'm
Sultana.
gonna
Go for it.
saying that I
okay,
don't think there's a holdup with wanting to do the work. I think that just like the reality that opportunities seem to be slimmer for marginalized communities.
Um, do you think it's more of like a thing where it's just like it's too much competition as far as like everybody trying to get in, or like what do you think?
Um,
Sorry.
okay, I don't know. I can't tell. There's like a delay, so I'll just chime
Yeah.
in.
Sorry.
Okay, cool. From like my observations, and I think we all have our
Mhm.
own like take on this, and it may overlap, but I feel like from day one in the classroom, when you're in high school or in college, I feel like in those rooms, it's like how many women are there, and how many like Black people are there. People of all different backgrounds are there. It's like it's predominantly like white males in those rooms, which is unfortunate. I feel like there just needs to be so much work. To just have more music programs just from like day one. They shouldn't be elective. They should be like part of the curriculum, and then just but then a lot of people are just passionate about music, so they find themselves there eventually. And then when they do, the opportunities that should be available to them just aren't, because sometimes the studios are like, oh, we want to hire someone that we know or is substantiated in some sort of way, and so there need to be like opportunities all along the way to allow people to kind of like build their resumes and their careers, so when those opportunities do present themselves, they're eligible for them. So it's like this really complicated tiered thing that I find from like day one. It's just like how much experience you have to like, okay, well, if you might have some experience, like is it enough to convince someone that they should take a chance on you? And then there's also the work that needs to be done on the other side, where like studios need to stop being racist and just actually like hire people who are eligible, and not pigeonhole someone based on their look. We should all be able to work on a family drama about any kind of family. So just not necessarily like within our culture. Although yes, people will have a nuanced understanding of music and style sensibility. Like I know nothing about New Orleans, but I'm sure like Sultana could totally kill like a really awesome thing that would just happen in that setting. But that said, I think it's really important studios should, as they're doing their pitches for the different composers, different projects, it should be like a parity thing that's happening. It's like, okay, there's 10 composers, like make sure like X amount are from this background, X amount from that background, X amount are women, X amount are male, or any kind of. And so I think when that pitch happens, it should be an equal pitch, and it shouldn't just be like who worked on the last thing, and everything's just been part of this whole rigmarole where it's usually white men, and it's like you don't want to just keep hiring the same white men over and over again. You shouldn't, because it's just been happening. But yeah, it's like a tiered, stacked, layered, complicated thing where it just needs to be like everyone should have an equal opportunity to present their materials and pitch for these projects, and there's work being done in those spaces to like make it happen. A lot of groups, advocacy groups, like the Alliance of Female Composers, or the Composers Diversity Collective. There's spaces where they can help kind of bridge the gap between the studios and these talent pools for getting hired on these gigs.
Anybody else have anything? Could you tell us a
Yeah,
little bit more about the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
no, it's all right.
No, you good.
I respect everything that has been said. I think this goes into a topic um, that I do a lot of research in, is basically how treating sound as biology and the gendered racialization of sound. So a lot of when we talk about music and sound in particular, only certain genres are institutionalized as legitimate sounds. And those genres are classical and jazz. Now, those are very racialized. Genres are all racialized. And it's not just with music, it's also just speech and text. So people just naturally, well, not naturally, it's not natural, but people have a very hard time. People can have a hard time just listening to Black women, just listening to our experiences. Is very, very difficult for people to just listen to someone talking. And a lot of the time, people trust another demographic when it comes to sound and how they hear. And because you don't need to necessarily have a classical background, you can hear. You are sound. We are sound. We are vessels of sound. So it's something that is for everyone has become somehow very exclusive. And also, like, just because I have these certain markers does not mean that I can only score films about the markers that I feel. There are so many topics that worked with that I've enjoyed working with. I did a scene once for a film that was Eastern European. And that was really cool for me, honestly, to just be an observer to a conversation that I'm not necessarily a part of. It was very freeing in ways. And, there are certain instruments, especially when you're doing something that is genred as Black. There are certain instruments that people recognize more as Black instruments as opposed to instruments that are not Black. So I love bassoon. I love writing for bassoon. And rarely when I do a film that has where it's a racial theme, rarely are my bassoon pieces approved. Like they like it, but they want me to switch it. Like we like all the notes, but can you change it to saxophone? Some instrument that is more relatable to their target audience, which is also robbing a curiosity, is robbing an intellectual capacity that Black people have, people of all colors have. And this is not just within film scoring. When we think of the history, Black musicians were not allowed to be on radio stations. And there was a station for them, and there was a station for other groups of people. And we know that some of them stole some of those sounds. And, but white music or classical music is just seen as more intellectually advanced than other sounds, unfortunately. And when artists back in the 60s or even before were writing their music, they would do it in a way that was very natural for them, that was beyond the intellectual capacity of the dominant filter. So, they couldn't keep up anymore. I remember hearing pieces by, like when you hear a cover, and it happens now, like if you look on social media, like covers that artists do of music by Black artists, and people tend to laugh at them because they're not hitting it a way that people want them to hit it. So all of this to me is just the topic of the gendered racialization of sound.
I
When you guys, sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the
Sorry.
delay. I feel that your question, I think, at least from what I've seen, started when I was smaller. I started noticing that they started taking the instruments out of school, especially in particularly, schools where it was predominantly Black. And this started when I was younger. And they were taking the music program. There was always like the music program was the first one to go, always. And I found it. I was, I'm amazed about a lot of things, but just to keep it short. Um, there's this tendency. It's almost like you are love your culture, just don't want to see you doing it. It has to be for another demographic, not you. And that's that's a big portion of it. I mean, that's why the drum machine was formed, because the MPC, you took the instruments out of school. So what the kids start doing? They start beating on desks with pencils in their fists. Well, you took the instruments, but that wasn't stopping nothing, you know. We was still gonna go. Like that's who Black people are. They gonna go. I don't care what you do. You could take everything. They still gonna go. They gonna find. We gonna find a way. That's just who we are. And that's just keeping it a thou wow, like all the way real. We're gonna find a way, because everything. I'm just gonna say it. I mean, we're not a culture. We are culture. So you know you just kind of hard to rob it from the originator, but I mean it happens all the time, and it just like I said, it's like, like you said with the bassoon. Well, great piece, but you think you can identify how the fact that saxophone is even, you associate an instrument to race is wild. And sometimes when you say a thing out loud, when you actually hear it out loud, when you said that, it did something to me because I know what was scary was and sad was I know you're absolutely right. I 1000%. But it's just, you can't it's just very difficult when that's how it started, at least for me, with the reason that you don't see us in things is because you've taken it started when you're young. See, all this stuff was taken out. The public school system that was gone. Then it started with, okay, well, the next thing we're going to do is let's hit it with the books. So we're going to now take the like the math books and we'll give you the older books from like 1948, and that's how it starts. And then it just keeps happening, and then it's like then one day, I don't know, you meet an artist and you meet an artist and they're sitting in front of you, and it's almost like you're trying to figure, I mean, I'm sure the daily question, I'm gonna just say it because I'm amazed. The daily question is, because how do Black folks do it? I mean, you take everything from them and they still pull it off times 10. I'm amazed myself. To be honest, I mean, I ain't gonna front. I'm amazed myself. But yeah, like it's just it starts when I think a lot of it started when we were young though, and we watched it gradually happen. But if it just was one of those things. It was just like, oh, let's just take it kind of in small portions here and there, here and there. Until now it's just completely gone. But then see, yeah, like I said, now here's the NPC. Well, now it went from, we beating with our fists and pencils to, oh man, they got a whole drum machine they done made from this. And we took the instruments. Well, boom, there it is. I mean, I don't know, black magic. So yeah, I'm sorry. I just went on a full tangent. My fault.
No, it was great.
I think that there's something to be said for like this climate that we exist in, around the convergence of erasure, exclusion, and ignorance. I know that a lot of the things that were ethnocultural knowledge I learned at home. I did not learn in school, and we're here at this moment where what was done just as the rule of centering Europeanness or Eurocentric has now birthed the venomous grandchild where there is intention, not as in focusing your culture at the center, but saying, actually, no, we're not going to evolve. We're actually going to put things in place that challenge fact and being actual and factual with history, with this whole like CRT thing happening. So I think that the convergence of ignorance, exclusion, and erasure in the past kind of creates an environment where people think of themselves as what was done to them as opposed to what they actually are. And I think for a lot of the folks who were able to transcend that reality, it comes from a place of who do you have in your life that can inspire you, that always affirmed and reaffirmed your humanity so that you did not create your spine out of what you didn't have or what folks told you shouldn't have. So I'm saying this because I think about a lot of performing artists that we know in Black music who were composers, whether it's Isaac Hayes, Curtis Mayfield, Quincy Jones, and often you hear them spoken about as producers or performers. And they had a depth of skill. They scored film. If you really look at their credits and their resume, like when you get into it, it's way more than what they're thought of on the surface. And now with people really trying to do the work of discovering, and I don't like to use that term, but work of broadening their horizons and looking at the history of music, even classical music, more accurately. Now you have the shows going up with Chevalier du Saint George or people talking about Christ. And it's not that we weren't there. This is the stuff for people who are, composition geeks or who are Black, that obscure reference thing that you geek out reading new folks in your genre, the stuff that isn't taken at face value, the things that you have to dig for. And my hope is that in trying to make this adjustment and make things more accurate, as opposed to the idea of including people, right? Because it's not about doing someone a favor. It's about being better as a society and being, then hopefully we'll get to see that transformation generations.
Amazing. How do all these things come into play when you're working on a piece for someone else? Because it's kind of like you have to work under what they want to create versus what you're feeling. How do you balance that out? What's the process like for creating a score?
I think the first thing is knowing that you're not working under them, you're working with them. They have to trust you and you have to trust them. It is a relationship. We are partners. And that is something that has been helpful for me in this process because, like, it's not just with song, it's with speech and text. So or on the composer side, when you say something, you're saying it trusting that they will hear you and how you are receiving the scene and vice versa, and putting that into consideration. It's a dance with each other. There are composers who can, some of the ones that we are encouraged to love, the ones that we are encouraged to remember. Some of them might have a history of being, divas or like saying, well, I'm gonna do what I want to do and this. But who wants to work with someone like that? You want to be able to have conversations with them. In my process, I like to ask them to just send me music that you're listening to right now, and that's not necessarily just music that you hear for this film, because sound is feral, and you have to be open to, like what Jlin was saying. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I wake up, when I have to do a scene, and I like that. So I like the curiosity, I like the journey. So I think the first thing is realizing that you're not working under them, you're working with them.
I totally agree with the sentiment of you definitely have to trust each other. One of the things Wayne McGregor, I remember him saying to me is I'm not going to micromanage you, because if I do, I'm not going to get the best out of you. If I'm constantly on your head, like, this isn't going to work. And I feel the same way. I feel like when you approach a person, there's a reason that you approach them, to collaborate with them, and you all have to trust each other. I've always been a person that has been very free about my work, as far as having to. I know that I'm going to have to be uncomfortable if my best is going to come out. I have to be complacent and knowing that this is going to be very uncomfortable. This is going to be a wild journey, a wild ride, because I'm having to dig inside of myself and pull something out that I know is there. And it's quite a process. Can be overwhelming sometimes. We all go through it. You have writer's block and you still got deadlines, and nobody's really trying to hear about your writer's block and a deadline. But that's a real thing. That's a real thing that really does happen. But one thing you definitely, I think trust is crucial. Vulnerability is crucial. I definitely, your vulnerability is that, to me, I think that is my greatest asset, is my vulnerability, musically, creatively, overall, is my vulnerability, my willingness to be as transparent and open as I can. Because I want the person to feel like whoever I'm working, whether it's a solo or it's a commission, a collaboration of a thing. I want whoever is listening at that end result to feel like they were present when they walked this journey with us. or whether it's just with me solo. I think that's important because anything outside of that, I think is not real, because I damn sure don't want to come in like it was, I came in and it's this big facade, like I got it all together, because I don't. And I want you to know that. I want you to feel that musically, that there's a very much a huge human factor there. And I'll go so far as to sometimes leave mistakes in my tracks on purpose. I think that kind of thing is crucial. Like just to, we live in a world where everything, trying to remove the human factor. I can't do that, because that's not who that's just not, I think, who, at least that's not who I am. And so I try to, the authenticity, I think, is what we're missing a lot in art, honestly. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Sorry.
Anyone else? All right. Okay. Sorry.
You have to have a foundation of trust, as Sultana said, first and foremost. And the reason I enjoy it is because it's an opportunity to collaborate with people across disciplines. And you never know where you might find inspiration. It could be the timbre or the intonation of an actor's voice, the beautiful cinematography, what the color wash is, atmospheric or ambient sound. Just being open is the key, I think.
Amanda, do you have anything to add to this?
I think, I would just probably echo everyone's comments, but yeah, it's really all about those initial creative conversations with the director and just kind of outlining a framework together. And it's very much a collaboration. And then kind of like once you have that identified, and for me, I have really intense discussions with the director, kind of like I have to ask them, what are they listening to, like, and really kind of hone in on where they are, like their cultural framework about things, and what they think about things. I remember working with this one director, and it took me a long time to figure out what he meant by hip hop, and he was like a German director. And ultimately, it took a long time for we figured out that meant RJD2 for him. So it's just really funny when you're kind of like working with someone. Just like those initial conversations are so important to kind of really identify where someone is, like culturally, where they are musically, and then kind of like dig into their characters, like the script, all the inspiration that exists like within the story, to kind of just like create this sonic palette together. And then once you've got that down, you're like off and running, and it's great.
Now, when you sit down to create a piece, there's like almost infinite possibilities of ways that you can approach it. How do you approach telling a story? Like, what's your process and technique for making sure you tell the story in the correct way with each cue?
For me, it goes back to those like early conversations with the director, to really underscore, what they want to like, uplift or highlight or kind of push into the story. There are certain things, like sometimes you don't want to be, sometimes you do want to be like prescriptive and like this is sad and this sounds sad, or sometimes you want to kind of play against it, or sometimes there's like every sound in the universe to help articulate what it is to be sad or what it is to be happy. And some of them are cliche and some of them aren't, and you can get really creative with how you want to like articulate those sounds. And so it's really kind of just like once you have that framework in the beginning of like what instruments the director likes or what they're open to, then it's just like you're off and running to like tell the story musically and just have a lot of fun with it. And you can be very, very creative when you're doing it. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right. I guess let's talk about some other music that other film scores that maybe have inspired you, or other composers or artists that have inspired you and have reflected into your own work. Is there anybody? Start with Sultana.
Well, honestly, the women on this panel, honestly, like I am really honored to be on this panel with like such powerful creators and sonic sirens. So I mean, honestly, the people that I'm around, I love the people that I'm around, the people that I know. A lot of people that I listen to, I know, honestly. But in addition to that, to answer your question, I think of things that I liked when I was a child and how they've influenced me greatly. So things that I listened to as far as film scores that I listened to as a child that have still like very much so a part of my DNA is Eve's Bayou, the film Eve's Bayou. That film is interesting because I grew up in a very strict household and I was not allowed to watch anything related to, magic, unfortunately, or anything about psychics or ghosts or talking to the dead. But that was the film that was allowed in my household. That story, I guess it was because it was so similar to my family and our dynamic. They didn't register it under those topics that I just named. They just saw it as a part of our family. So the score for Eve's Bayou by Terrence Blanchard is one of my favorite film scores and one of my favorite films of all time. And I think I'm gonna just keep that as my answer for now.
All right. Tamar?
I mean, I think that I keep coming back to this particular moment in my childhood of the together of film. It was animated and music, and of course the Prokofiev piece existed before the film, but Peter and the Wolf, and just the strong connection it gave me to understanding themes, leitmotifs. To this day, if I hear the wolf's theme with the bassoon, I know it's the wolf, or the bird with the flute, and just thinking about how sound makes such a strong impression on the psyche and particularly the young mind.
Jlin, do you have it?
Ooh, probably. Oh my goodness, I used to love the music in Alfred Hitchcock's movie. I thought it was. I love that. It was music for uh, "Mommy Dearest." Uh, the movie The Grandmaster. Love the soundtrack for The Queen's Gambit. Yeah, like my pyramid shifts constantly. I mean, we can be here all day. But just, we can be here all day. Like I go from I said to people, I said, I range from see, truthfully, I said because I feel like balance is important. I said I can range from uh Igor Stravinsky all the way down to Lil Jon. So, I'm open. So it's just what it is. I'm never I've always told myself that, musically, I said my music, I never wanted it to just be for festivals or performance or whatever. Wherever it can fit, I would be more than happy, if it can fit. And I agree with the fit. I feel like, yeah, you know what, it can go. I love Sade's my favorite artist. So yeah, it's all over the place.
Amanda?
Yeah, so for me, I was a big Ennio Morricone fan. He's like an amazing Italian composer. I think The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of his like probably most popular scores, and I just love his use of guitar and orchestra, and just how he made use of like kind of like his 1960s, 1970s era of writing is really incredible, and how it sounds like the 1960s, 1970s band like infused into an orchestra. And I try to do that with my own writing. I'm kind of more of like a shoegazy, like psychedelic type of writing, like indie rock type of writing. So I try to infuse that into my orchestral writing whenever I can. Kind of like a similar idea, but it's like today's sound as opposed to like a 60s sound. And John Williams is amazing. I really, really enjoy his work, and I think his like horn writing and flute writing are just insane, and it's just I don't know, he makes use of every aspect of the orchestra. And I feel like no one is like resting for too long, and he like it's pretty cool. It's easy to kind of languish in your writing these legato parts, but it's like it's kind of nice to stay on top of your toes and just reference some of his materials and other composers' materials just to kind of like keep it moving and keep it exciting and change up the time signatures and phrasing. I think that's cool.
Cool. We're getting close to the end here, so I just want you guys to tell us what you have coming up next, if there's anything we should be looking out for. Tamar, let's start with you.
I'm in the process of working on my next recording release. It's an EP, doing a couple of commissions, one for LA Opera. I have some music theater pieces happening. And I mean, the world is open. We're trying to stick our heads out post-COVID, we'll suppose, but there's a lot going on. I just dipped my toe into the TV pool for the first time. I might be calling you for some tips, Amanda, because it'll be my first time doing anything
Cool.
exotic. So, I'm trying to stay positive, proactive, and eclectic.
Jlin?
I'm working on my album right now, so this will be technically be my third one. And I named it. I got a name out that I can't tell you, but yeah, it's I'm working on my album. I feel like it's been a long time coming. I finally was one of those kind of like projects where you finally like you are afraid to do, and it's like, okay, now I can do this. So yeah, I'm working on my album. I just finished a project with Kyle Abraham. Where actually it's premiering. It's Mozart based, and it's actually premiering in Hamburg in Germany. I wrote for him, and so that's exciting. And so yeah, it's just like I'm all over the place. I mean, hey, it's good days, it's bad days, I'll take them as they come. Like you said, hey, trust the process and live your best life. That's where I'm at right now.
All right. Amanda?
Yeah. So there are these like American Horror Stories, like one-off hour-long specials. There's a different composer on each special. So episode 5 is coming out tonight at 9 p.m. on FX and Hulu. And I hope you're scared if you watch it. It was my first kind of real foray into like horror, so it's pretty fun. And then 20 season 2, I'm working on that now, and it's coming out soon. Excited.
Sultana?
So I did a film called The Neutral Ground that debuted at Tribeca, and it's on PBS right now. It's been on PBS for a month, and today is the last day to view it, online at least, for free, without an account or anything like that. And that's a documentary about the removal of Confederate monuments in the world, but specifically New Orleans. And right now I'm working on my first mini-series. I'm working on a mini-series for PBS called Making Black America, and is hosted by Henry Louis Gates Jr. and directed by, it's so funny. I feel like I want to say this because one of the directors, Stacey, she did a documentary series for Malcolm X, Who Killed Malcolm X on Netflix, and I watched it when it came out, and I thought the series was amazing, and I was like, oh, I hope they call me one day. And then like a year later, they called me. So, so yeah, and that should be coming out next year.
Awesome. All of you are a huge inspiration. I'm really amazed by all of your work, and I want to thank you guys for talking today. Thanks a lot. I think that's it.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.